Well guys, today's a very exciting day, back with the Nova after a short stint without it. Brad's got most of the wiring done. We picked it up last night because that was about the only time that worked for us. But today we're gonna start back on getting it together. I know we've missed our goal of 6 week with it, but you know, when you have something like this that you've spent so much time and money on, you definitely want to do it right, and that's kind of where we're at. We wanted to do the wiring right, we wanted the paint right. Luckily, Mitch has already done most of the body work and is ready for paint. So kind of this week I want to get all the plumbing done, get the rest of everything mounted and like basically ready to go. The new engine should be showing up from HED. I got drive shafts, so really just trying to get it ready to make sure we have all of our final details covered. That way when I pass it off to Mitch for paint at the end of this week, we can know that when it comes back, we just final assembly, fire it up, get it running. At least that's the goal. Got a lot of work to do. Now presenting. Man, it's been a minute since I've seen this thing. I mean, I saw it last night, but you know, with pumpkin spice being back in the picture, I kind of like, I didn't lose interest, but I wasn't nearly as excited, but now I'm excited to see it again. Especially with as many races we've been to lately. I'm ready to get this thing fired up. One of the things we're doing a lot of right now is just like trying to prepare for the car to leave again. We're checking out fuel lines and stuff. We're gonna try these new ultra light race light style Fergola hose and fittings. And we don't stock those. I've never used them before, but I guess like the rest of the car, I just want to try some new stuff on it. Learn what we like and don't like. So we moved this and so we went ahead and moved our sending unit because I know we talked about it before, but I want to be able to move the line from the pump, so that made it more symmetrical. We're going to run the lines down here. That way, if we ever take this tank out, we're just going to have a flat panel that goes in there. There won't be holes in the floor and stuff like that. So we're trying to think 2 steps ahead. It's nice to have multi-purpose for the car and not have to make all new panels. On top of that, we just got a new PST carbon fiber drive shaft for it, so I'm going to check that out. Once that goes in there, this was a new lockup 400, but I need to have it gone through and make sure it's drag and drive ready. It was actually, that particular transmission was actually built for like a Pro 275 car originally. So if you follow a lot of drag and drive stuff, one of the main failure points of a transmission is if it doesn't have a steel lined drum, that can cause you problems. So we're gonna have Dave at Proformance go through all that stuff, make sure it's good to go. But I'm taking an opportunity, while it's at paint, I'm gonna try and push as much of the stuff through. That way when it comes back, it's all mine. I can assemble it, get the glass in it and all that stuff, and you know, just get it ready to go. So we got the intake off. Originally I had fittings on the other side for the shear intake manifold, or for the intercooler, but I had it moved to this other side because the lines are gonna come down here. So I'm gonna sell that other one. So I'm gonna go ahead and just get rid of that other one. But yeah, you can see we're just starting to lay out all the lines and stuff because we need a list of fittings. So we're just trying to get everything figured out now. That way we can have plenty of time to plan. And then I gotta mount this big old dry sump pump. We opted to go with an external dry sump pump because we can scavenge the turbos off of it. We can pull vacuum from the actual motor, and then obviously pump oil through the engine. So this thing is going to be a pain. We're going to have to build a mount off of the block here to hold it up, and then we're going to drive it off the front of that. So once I get that, what I want to do is basically like mark where that goes, and then when the real engine shows up, I can hold the motor plate on top of that and just build that on an engine stand. But besides that, not a whole lot of fabrication to do. One of the reasons I want to use this race light hose, it's very flexible, it's reinforced, very small diameter, and it's very light. So that's 45 feet of number 6, and it weighs 2.7 pounds. Now this stuff is not really cost effective for most builds. This is something that's, I would say, is reserved for something that you're really trying to take weight out of every last spot. Crimp fittings are going to save on the weight of the nut itself of the fitting. The line, if you think about it, is also very light. So basically my goal is I'm trying to save weight in every spot on this vehicle. Maybe there's somebody that can do it better than I am, but I can't look past the amount of line I used to have on this car. number one, the fluid that's in it, but also number two, just the weight of the line and the fittings themselves. They all add up. There's a lot of them on there. The plumbing on a turbo car like this is pretty extensive, so that's why we're running that. Not tit for tat, but that's 20 foot of PTFE, and it's 2.5 pounds. So we're talking about half the weight of PTFE. All right, here's regular braided nylon rubber hose. That's 25 feet again, but 25 feet is 2.7 pounds. So if you think, and that's just number 6. So if you think about, you're gonna have at least probably 20 feet going to your trans cooler, depending where it's mounted. You're gonna have a lot of 16, a lot of 12, a lot of 10, a lot of 8. It all just adds up. So, and in addition, the crimp fittings are going to be less weight than the screw together one. So if you think about all those couple pounds added up, you might save 40, 50 pounds, which is pretty tremendous for something that's not really like sacrificing anything. So definitely pay attention to your lines and fittings. Not sure if you guys have seen this Copo before, but we picked up a Copo that we're going to race in stock eliminator. This car has only about 6 or 10 passes on it, and we're going to motion it out. So make sure you subscribe to our channel, because we are going to show you some videos of this thing coming together. It's a pretty basic Copo right now, and we're getting ready to put everything we got for an LS and suspension and brakes and all that on this thing. And we even developed some parts along the way. So one of my big pet peeves is you know, line routing and just clean wiring and all that stuff, which this thing still might turn into a dumpster fire. One of the things I've learned over the years when it comes to like wiring and plumbing, it requires you to have some patience. It also requires you to say, okay, what I just did was junk, or what's there, just got to cut it off and start over. And that's pretty much the stage where we're at right now. Like, I thought we were good to go, just run some lines. But the more you look at it, you're like, I don't want lines running here, there, and everywhere across the engine bay, looking like a spaghetti, looking like a bowl of spaghetti. Not good, not a good look, especially a car that's fabricated this well and just has this many details. Plus, it makes things really hard to work on. So we went ahead and used to have the water pump mounted right here, and the lines kind of like shot over. But what that did, we're just basically out of space to mount this remote mount oil filter, and quite frankly. And actually, the line needs to go down this side because the inlet is down there on that back side of the oil pan. You can kind of see it hanging down there. So we wanted it on this side. We also wanted to be able to drain the oil without having some crazy contraption. So I think what I'm going to do, since I moved it from there, I'm going to build a bracket off the frame right there, mount it right here. This inlet will get plugged. This other inlet, we're behind my finger right there. We're going to run a line from basically the pump over to this, and then from this, the outlet down to the pan. So that'll be nice and clean. It'll be easy to drain oil. And if you look line of sight, it's way out of the way of the drive tires, and obviously the front tires as well. So I think we're safe as far as that goes. And then the water pump, oddly enough, the outlet fitting for the radiator is right here on the back side of here. So we're gonna do a 180, come around here, and then tomorrow I'm gonna have one of the guys plasma cut me a mount to mount this thing right off the core support, so it'll be hidden behind a bumper. The line routing will get a couple big 16s out of the engine bay, so it'll be inlet here, and then these two outlets will then wrap around here. So not much different than they would have been. They'll run next to that oil filter and then shoot over to here. And then our other two lines from the radiator inlet are going to be right there. So hopefully that cleans that all up. That'll make the water pump won't be hard to change if you ever need to, because there's plenty of room behind the bumper. I mean, the bumper hangs out like here and it's way back in there. Hopefully it'll clean the engine bay up, tidy things up. It's not going to block any flow from the radiator because the bumper was already right there. So we should be good as far as that goes. And then our next thing is we're going to have to start figuring out these intercooler lines. So I got this cool billet bulkhead. This actually came off my Nova from the last rendition. But we're going to go ahead and put that on a firewall somewhere here. Of course, this is a nerve-wracking cut because it's got a nice crispy firewall that doesn't have any holes in it. One thing I wanted to note is that anytime you have fittings straight like this, if you mount them you mount it straight up and down, you know, like this, the only way your fittings can go is up like that, which actually is fine. But if you mount it like this, the fittings run into each other if you try to go one way or another. So if you're running lines, sometimes it's nicest to have the fittings come out, or, you know, have the block mounted crooked, and then it allows you to be able to reach the fittings with a wrench pretty easily. So I think we're going to probably end up cutting this through right around there, and then the lines will just shoot up here. One of the lines will go right up to the end of here, so it's kind of crank around here, and then the other one will follow it up and then turn around here, and then we'll have a 90 coming off here. So the name of the game is, with this thing, we know we're going to have to set valves, so we need to try and minimize how hard it is to take the valve covers off. So these are all things you got to worry about. Of course, the aesthetics are nice. We need to make sure the serviceability is also being taken into account. You need to be able to make sure you can get to fittings, check connections, you know, airlines, and all that stuff. I've learned this over the years, especially with a drag and drive car. When you get to the track, you don't want to make it hard to work on, because it stinks to change it over or work on it in the heat when you only have a little bit of time. So in a way, we're like one step forward, two steps back, but we're learning. I'm making a list of new fittings that I need, because I thought I had most ordered, but I was definitely mistaken on that whole deal. One of my favorite things about this car is this jack mount that these guys worked into this thing. You know, with the frame rails being so low on this car, it's hard to jack it up, but there's clearance in the back. So now when we're at the track, you know, you just crank this thing up, it drops the wheels out of the fenders, so you can actually pull the tires off, and you don't have to put it on jack stands and like jack it up side to side. Just a nice touch you guys might think about putting on your own ride.
Where's the jump? Dude, you are too much.
Oh man. Walter, what are you doing?
Look at the table.
Some Jessel rockers on that unit. I'm not sure if you guys are the same way, but is it even possible to look at an intake port like this and not just go like that? It just adds like 20 horsepower when you do that. So just got to make sure the grooves are right. So we got
Cause that's probably 1/2 inch right there.
Yep. So then you put the baffle. Yeah, I wouldn't go much shorter. So guys, these are a new style rocker. I had Jessel rockers on it before, but they weren't true shaft style. So these actually moved the rocker up further, which means they didn't clear our standard style valve cover as seen there. Most LTs won't ever run this. So it's kind of a little bit of a one-off, but not really, because Andy's engine for his new car is going to have it. Red's is going to have it, and I'm sure they're selling more of these than just what's here. So Mitch is making, he made this 3D model. It's basically our other valve cover moved up with the burn down breathers on it. So we're gonna just try and do that. But that means I want the burn downs on it so it's easy to service the valves, because it's solid roller motor. So then I need to get the coils and remount them over here, which my wiring guy's gonna hate, but sometimes you gotta make those, you know, game time decisions, right, Andy? Otherwise, you're just going to hate your life when you're servicing stuff from now on.
You're in a rush on race week, you're going to be mad.
Well, it's like really it kind of makes you make the decision to not run the valves when you should run the valves, because when you're running valves on a motor like this, a solid roller deal, not only are you checking to make sure it's in, but you might notice things like if you tool up a valve and it sucks a valve up in a head, if you have valve train issues, it's going to show when you do that. So then you might not make a run, but in turn, in 2023, it takes forever to get parts, so you might save an engine so you can get it back together sooner. So
it's an error point, you missed run, like you gotta unplug all those wires and then plug them all back in, and if you miss a wire, it's just a chance to wait.
Yeah, every time you unplug a coil pack main harness and plug it back in, you can bend a pin over, and all those things, you find a million ways to screw up, or at least I do anyways. So we're gonna try and minimize those. And so I think we're gonna end up moving the coils, mount them out here on the bar, and then we'll just have like short plug wires down there. And and hopefully Mitch can just snap his fingers and make this plastic valve cover turn into a metal one relatively soon.
It's already in the schedule.
It's already on the schedule.
Already in the schedule.
I think the strap's gonna be strong enough. What do you think, Andy?
Pretty good.
It'll lift a Silverado.
Good.
Lift it up. Actually, that's not the Shyster. That's our Nissan.
This is Betty White.
That's Betty White, yeah.
Most dependable fork truck you ever.
Betty White, I bought this fork truck at our old shop for like a couple $1,000 and then drove it half a mile to our shop. They didn't want it anymore, but she's seen some miles and abuse. We had to rebuild the steering column and put a new switch in it, rebuild the mast. What's that?
So Garrett don't know what he's missing. If he gets on this, he'll never drive another Shyster.
Yeah, that Shyster is like middle of the mall stuff compared to Betty White. Hey, do me a favor and don't drag this thing around like he dragged that one.
We're gonna go down the hill.
Yeah, don't. It's just got to come straight up. Oh, engine like this one where you're actually deleting the direct injection because that's just something that nobody should have to mess with. We actually plugged all the holes on the direct port because they will actually shoot oil up. And oddly enough, so will these holes right here. So you need to make sure that you put bolts in them and just like Loctite them because they have actual direct access into the oil galley. And that ran us for a loop one time. Me and Red actually like got oil all over the engine bay when we first deleted all those and then left those bolts out. But the other thing you need to remember is on these mechanical fuel pump holes. So this is where the factory mechanical pump is for the direct injection. There's actually an oil plug in here. Pete and the guys actually put a plug because there's an oil galley crossover right here. So that's fed obviously for the reason of lubricating the oil pump and feeding oil into it because it's kind of like a lifter. But if you aren't doing that, we sell this little plug here. I don't really care one way or another. We made this just to solve a problem. This is basically designed to do the same thing. 2 O-rings, put it down there and it just redirects the oil back out without leaving it. Because if you don't put that plug in, you're gonna have a huge oil pressure loss situation. In fact, you might just not make any oil pressure in your engine, kind of like leaving a barbell out of an LS engine. So a couple key takeaways on the LT platform. Make sure you put bolts in that if you're removing the direct injectors, which I highly recommend removing them, and make sure you plug them. All right, another cool part that came as a result of this engine, obviously if you plug that hole, the factory mechanical pump usually comes through a hole in the back. On these race deals with the port injection only, we made this race valley cover that not only plugs that, it also looks really cool, but then in the front, we eliminated the factory goofy sensor for the fuel or for the oil pressure. So if you're running Holley or Haltech, Fuel Techs, whatever, you can just run a standard 1/8 inch NPT. This will actually be a line that runs right to my rife block, but you could of course put like a 90 and a screw-in sensor on there. But just makes it more usable for the normal person. You don't have to buy the expensive factory style sensors. You can just use what the EFI system is already looking for. Just trying to make this platform more readily available to make a race engine out of, because in my mind, it's a great race engine. All right, guys, so let's talk a little bit about what this engine is. For this version, we went with a 6.6 Gen 5 LT, which is the new L8T. This one actually has a center counterweight forged crankshaft, so we have the factory crank in it. We went with steel rods again, some billet steel rods, and then some nice Ross pistons that Pete had built up for this thing. The reason why we went with the steel or iron block, I should say, is Pete was worried about the point where we're at with this engine. We were starting to, things are going to start moving around. It's making a lot of horsepower. One thing you have to remember is when we built this car originally, my only goal was to go 790. It was the first Gen 5 LT car in the 7s ever, at a pretty decent weight, 3,500 pounds. But we really didn't know a whole lot about the combination. So what we did back then was run a sleeved aluminum block. However, at the size of the engine with the sleeve block, Pete was worried about the structural integrity of the sleeve block. When you're boring that factory aluminum block and then pressing sleeves in, the sleeves start to get quite thin, and then the block kind of loses its structure. And knowing how much power we're wanting to make out of this new combo, we're wanting to be competitive in that high to mid 6 second category, which means we're going to put a lot of horsepower down, even way more than we had before. We lost weight. We're adding bigger turbos, probably more boost if possible. and go into some new engine changes. So I'll show you here in just a second, like what we're talking about with the structural integrity. The only fortunate thing that came from this engine destruction, look at this thing. When I do it good. You can actually see, this is the sleeves missing out of this, but you can see how thin it's razor thin between the cylinders. And that's about right at the peak. But that was what Pete was worried about. You know, look how thin it is. They obviously all cracked right in that same spot, right there, you know, at the edge of the radius or the tangent, whatever you would want to call it, where those two meet together. And then you're pushing iron sleeves down in. So even before you get going, there's a potential that there's some damage done to that. And then obviously as you start to apply power, things are starting to move around, heat, pressure, all that stuff. So even the sleeves are ballooning a little bit here and there. Even though the sleeves are reasonably thick, it doesn't mean that, they're not really. If you look at them, they're pretty thin in and of themselves. You're just not really gaining a whole lot of structure in the engine. And the last thing we want is a catastrophe like this. Of course, this was caused by a lack of fuel. We know why this happened, but you know, we don't want this type of failure again. And quite frankly, we just don't want to give up anything. So this one thing you'll notice is we had LME. Those guys are awesome. They built us this new billet front cover with a mechanical pump. What this does is allows us to run this front mount fuel cell. This mechanical pump runs off the camshaft. So, you know, we're gonna have, so having it on the camshaft, no belts to come off, anything like that. I really just wanted to get this thing set up for mechanical. If we ever do want to switch it to alcohol, we can a lot easier now. Of course, I like my race gas. That's probably where we'll stay. I don't see a whole lot of reason for it, especially anytime soon. But that's kind of where we're at. On the heads, we had the guys at GPI. They did these heads for us. They are the CID V2 heads. The engine is actually in here somewhere on, these are the old heads that came off of this, but they are serial number 8. And I think this one of these might be like serial number 5 or 1 or something like that. So that's an early set of CID heads. It was actually right when they came out. These are new and improved, and then GPI actually goes through, they ported them all. Those are non-ported heads, and did all the valves and everything. Pete had them do some custom work on them just to save him time. And you can see they actually did those O-rings built in here. The other thing that we did on this is super nice is made it for we made it for a standard gasket seat plug, so it doesn't have that tapered plug, which we had on those engines. And then the nicest thing is that we actually have a true shaft rocker system on this motor. That one was a stud rocker. And then there's a lot of other stuff that I can't really talk about on this, because this is really Pete's kind of big and nasty motor for an LT version. But we went with a solid roller on this thing. I was kind of sick of adjusting. You can't really adjust the hydraulic stuff. Like I talked about before, one of the things I didn't like about the hydraulic roller is once you set it, you can't like lash valves, or you aren't going to know a whole lot about like small variations and changes. This we can keep an eye on. We ran a billet steel camshaft, and then with this good valve train, some Manton push rods and stuff, this thing is going to be a bad machine. It's going to let us rev higher, have more valve train stability, and everything else that comes along with a solid roller. So this motor, the L8T crankshaft's a little bit bigger stroke. I think it's like a 388 or 382. The old one is a 362 crank. So this thing's going to end up being about a little over 400 cubic inches when it's all said and done. From there, you know, it is a stock block. Has been cemented halfway up for some more structural integrity, but I mean, this is the baddest of the bad LT motor in my opinion. There are some billet blocks out there. Maybe we'll try one of those later on. I think this 4-bolt headed motor is going to make some serious steam. We ended up with the 625 ARP studs for some extra clamping power. The name of the game when you're building a car is put it together, take it apart. Put it together, take it apart. So we're going to weld this bracket in for the remote mount oil filter, and then got this all cleaned up for remote mount water pump. After this, I think we should be done with welding on the car, but I'm gonna give it a good once over just to make sure we got everything we need. Well, we broke out the big guns because I spend too much time in the office to feel good about doing this, so. Sadly.
We'll get you taken care of.
First time welding, huh?
First time.
I mean,
Can you show me how to do it?
all right, so we are utilizing free ballast and weight placement. Went ahead and tacked up this mount. We're gonna put some gussets on that, but this will actually put the water pump right behind the front bumper, still in the middle of the car. So for function and safety standpoint, really not any different than you would be having it like right here or wherever. So test fit the bumper. It didn't fit the first time.
Didn't fit. We had to break off the tacks and remove it, but we got her fit now.
We were a little overly confident when we just tacked it without trying anything, but we decided, better try that bumper on real quick. Didn't fit. Broke tacks, put it back, and so now we can final weld it. I think that's the end of fabrication for now. I'm sure we'll have something later on, but at least that should get us in the right.
It's close.
It should get us in the right area, so we'll get that welded up. Here it is. It's blizzarding in Iowa, and we're supposed to haul this thing. Yeah, that's not good. Supposed to haul this thing to get painted today. That's probably not going to work so hot. Mainly because we have to push it uphill into the paint shop, so that's going to be a little sketchy. Help me pick out some parts, Walter. Alright guys, so right now Brent and I are scheming how to fit all this stuff in here. The dry sump pump, we realized that we got a driver's side one, so we're going to send it in and get it taken apart and reclocked so that the mount is facing upward so it's easier to mount. And then Brent's drawing up an alternator bracket.
Yep.
So just has a little model going on here. And before we had a triangulated bracket that the alternator mounted off of, but now we're going to move it to this side. And the whole time I had this car together before, we had the alternator backwards, so we're going to go ahead and do that again because we don't have enough space to turn it around. That thing seemed to live before, so just going to apply the same principles. Hopefully it doesn't throw belts, right?
Yeah, we'll make it work.
So basically we're going to tie these 3 points together and mount the alternator off of one of the points, I think this point, and then we're going to have it adjust and swing with a rod end to over here so you can tighten the belt. Should be nice and simple, not complicated, and because it's going to be on plane with the drive belt, it should be, it should have a good wrap. The best things in life happen in a 2-car garage, so we got to push this here car up that hill. Mitch does the stuff at home. He does all the body work and then sprays it in a booth later, so because he works on it at night and on the weekends and stuff like that. We brought the wrecking crew. Hopefully we're strong enough to push this thing up. High centered. We high centered her on the frame. Sorry, Ryan. Your paint job's probably a little messed up. We can touch her up. All right, guys. Mitch has pretty much painted everything I've had for the last 4 or 5 years, so
Yep.
maybe longer than that. But
Yeah, I think with the hood for this, the Leadbetter's Mustang, and
a bunch of different stuff.
everything.
Yeah. So he fixed the hood when Red forgot to Zeus it on last time. Trunk lid, I think. So the cool thing is Mitch is a big Nova guy. You help with a lot of Yanko restorations, Copos.
That's where I started out doing that when I was 13. Started doing that. Kept with it. Now we're painting at the body shop here in Eldridge.
Yep. So he works at Eldridge Body Shop here in Eldridge, Iowa. They're gracious enough to allow us to spray this thing there, but you're gonna do all the body work here, right?
Yep, we'll get everything ready, do all the body work here, and then we'll load it up on a trailer, take it across town, and spray it in my booth at the shop.
Yeah. So I don't know if you guys remember, but the Yanko stripes that were on the hood of this thing said LT1 because it's an LT1. Mitch was one that came up with those.
Yep.
Joe Schoenthaler, who helps you with a lot of the body and paint stuff. He
gets the stickers, and he's done so many of them, I just make him lay the stripes down too.
Yeah.
He's got the practice.
Oh yeah, you guys did the blue mule too.
The blue, yep. That was
way
it.
back
I
when.
actually sprayed that in this garage.
In this garage,
that
yeah.
was before we could use the shop.
So when I called Mitch and asked if he'd be interested in painting, he said, let's get all the body panels off while it's at wiring so we can get them blocked in primer. So as you can see, like, I think I gave you like a 68 fender, so you had to actually change the location of the one blinker.
Yep, making a bigger hole for the 70 to 72. The front marker lights are different than the earlier ones. So.
Yep, so he actually did all the metal work on that stuff, got these things blocked out, because the fenders were original fenders. Obviously the one was still good, but the other one was, it was rusty. It wasn't perfect, so, but it's still better than using the aftermarket steel, right?
For sure.
That's kind of the name of the game with this car. We're trying to keep it all like factory steel and everything, so. So yeah, this stuff's all blocked as far as I know and ready to go.
Yep. We'll put everything on, make sure everything still fits, lines up good, all the gaps look good, and then we'll start painting these while we finish getting the body ready to go.
Mitch sends me videos at night. He comes out here, drinks beer, and works on cars. Like, I don't know if it's like your dream, but it's pretty cool. So I don't know how many beers you're gonna drink in the process of building this one, but
there might be a few.
Few dozen.
Few
cold snacks. So you got roof and quarters pretty much outside of that, and then
roof quarters. We'll do the dash. We'll clean all that up.
I brought the other dash. Yeah, I brought the dash with me. So
yeah.
I mean, other than that, oh yeah, we got to cut a hole for the. You probably want to do that before you paint it.
Yeah, we'll do that.
I left the exhaust on there, so
Perfect.
I'll let you shape that.
Yeah. Nice template up the other side and make it look mirror image.
Can you just tell everybody to confirm that we are painting it PDR gray metallic?
Yep. That's been confirmed.
Everybody keeps asking. I talked about doing Jetstream blue, but I think we determined that gray is like the personality of this car.
Gotta stay gray.
Yeah. So we're gonna keep it gray. But I'm gonna set Mitch up with a bunch of some time-lapse stuff, so hopefully he can, snap us some cool video of him working his magic and stuff throughout. And hopefully when we pick it up, we can put that all on a little compilation for you guys. But I'm super excited. I would not have anybody but Mitch paint these cars for me, because this one, as much as I want it to go fast, I want it to be a show car. We were actually talking about painting this car complete right before I wrecked it, which would have broke both of our hearts.
Right. Yep, we had the hood done. The hood was fresh.
And Mitch is like, you want to bring me the whole car? And I'm like, it's getting tight on time. Let's just hold off. Yep. Thank God we did. Thank the Lord. Because that would have been really disheartening, but it's in good hands here, so I'm excited to see what you do with it. But we do need to get those Yanko stripes going too.
Yep, we'll get those coming, and it'll all come together.
You got the hood still?
Hood's at the body shop already.
Cool.
Just left it there, so I have to truck it around.
Yeah, make some more room in here.
Yep.
It's like I was saying I said in the video, I said the best things happen in 2-car garages. Motion started in 2-car garages, in a 2-car garage. This is here. Most of the world's best businesses start in a 2-car garage, so I'm excited to see this. All right, next time I see this garage, I'm betting it's going to be in color, so it's in good hands.